Hey, this is Jamie with Stonemaier Games, and welcome to today's livecast. This is a once in a year livecast, actually, today, because today I am announcing, as you can see behind me, our one new game of 2020 at Stonemaier Games. I'll be talking about it in a fair amount of detail today, answering some questions about it, but some of it will also remain a mystery because I'll spend the next couple weeks unveiling and revealing exactly what this new game is. But I can talk about some things. And to prepare for me not showing the back of the box as I usually accidentally do, I only have the box lid here. So I have the box, but not the box, the bottom of the box. One thing I should note up front is that if you are trying to get to our website right now, it appears that the influx of traffic from our e-newsletter has crashed the website temporarily. Our web developer is looking into it, but if you're looking for information about Pendulum, our new game, or looking to answer the poll about Rolling Realms, I'd ask that you save the e-newsletter and then go back to it in maybe an hour or so and re-click on those links because we'd love to have your feedback on that Rolling Realms poll, and I'd love for you to be able to check out the information that we have about Tapestry or Pendulum on our website. There's also a Facebook page that has that information, and that information yeah, I mean, really, most of it's on our website right now. So if you can't get to our website, that is an issue. I will put aside my email for now so I can focus on you. But I do have the e-newsletter up on my other screen here. The link to that is in the comments here, so you can check that out. Let's see. Josh mentions a typo on the homepage. Josh, can you email me about that? It's hard for me to fix that live or look into that live, but if you can email me the typo on the website, on the homepage, I'd love to be able to fix it. Thank you for pointing that out. And I'm glad you're able to access the website. Right now, I am not able to access our own website. So hopefully that will change soon. Awesome to see a lot of people joining me today. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about Pendulum a little bit. So this is Pendulum. This is our new game, our one new game of 2020. It is designed by Travis Jones, who is a designer that you probably haven't heard of. He has designed a bunch of games, but I don't think he's published any other games before. So this is his first published game. Congratulations to Travis. He might join us in the comments here. Also, while I'm talking about this, I might miss your questions. So I'm going to try to catch up on questions in a minute, but if I miss anything, just feel free to repeat the question and I'll get back to it. Art is by Robert Leask, who I think is also new to the board game world. And the core details that we've shared about this game so far is that it is a competitive 1 to 5 player game that plays in about 60 to 90 minutes that uses a few different mechanisms. It's a turnless worker placement game that does have it has simultaneous play, it has some real-time elements, but is also very much a medium weight Euro game. You have plenty of time to think through your decisions. You're not rushed, and the player who really optimizes their resources and their moves the best will likely be the player who wins. I've compared it a little bit to Seven Wonders in terms of the simultaneous play, not the drafting element, but the simultaneous play and the time optimization and time as a resource in Tzolk'in. Let me jump over to questions for a minute, see what I can answer, what I will answer right now, and then I'll jump back to it and talk about the game a little bit more. Let's see what I missed. Chris says, have I played a board game app that led me to purchasing a physical copy of the game? Yes, Shards of Infinity was that game for me. Mohammed says, where do I click order, please? I'm glad you're excited to order, Mohammed. Today we are just announcing the game, and we'll be talking about it over the next few weeks. Then it'll be followed by some early reviews of it, and then about a week later in early August, that's when you'll be able to pre-order it, and then we'll ship the games throughout August. So this is a game that we have already made. We don't do Kickstarter. We just make stuff that we believe in and sell it to you if you want it. If you want to follow along to find out what the game is throughout July, and then in August is when we will be selling and shipping the game, the first print run of the game. Oh, and one fun little thing that you can kind of see here, it's unnumbered here, but all first run copies will be individually numbered. So this is a first printing of Pendulum, and it will be individually numbered. Ali says, do I get a credit for naming Rolling Realms if you print it? Yeah, Ali, yeah, absolutely. I will write that down. I do remember you originally coming up with the name, and I want you to get credit for that. So, holiday I'll make a note of that. And Josh, I see your note about the typo on the web page where it says Pendulum next to the tapestry photo. I will look into that when I'm not live. Gerald says, what kind of questions will you answer about Pendulum, or what's off limits to answer? I mean, mostly the core details about the game are what I will discuss today, but feel free to ask anything. I might say I'll talk about that in the near future, but feel free to ask anything you're curious about. Wayne says, will you have enough copies for the pre-order? And we don't know. It's always a mystery. We don't know how many people will pre-order, but we are always happy to make more. We don't make limited runs of our games. We make as many as people want. So, well, we can always make more. Let's see. Okay, Carlos says, you mentioned that Pendulum is the highest rated prototype in the history of the Stonemaier Games Design Day. I'm curious who does that. How does that exactly work? So, the Stonemaier Games Design Day is kind of an Unpub-like event, if you've heard of Unpub, where a bunch of people come from around St. Louis and around the country to playtest their games and playtest games from other designers. We've done this, I believe, for 6 years now, maybe 7 years. Around 80 to 100 people attend this event. And the way the ratings work is after you playtest a game at Design Day, you write down on a little piece of paper on a scale from 1 to 10 what you thought about the game. Keeping in mind that it is a prototype at the time. They're all prototypes at that time. And we usually, on our website, if you look at Stonemaier Games' website for Design Day post, I post the ratings for the top ranked games at each Design Day. And you won't see Pendulum among them because it had a different name at the time. I believe it was Heir to the Throne or Heir to the Empire. But it was almost by far really the highest rated game, especially for a prototype level game. There's some games that come in a lot more polished. This was very much a prototype at the time, and it was the highest rated game in the history of Design Day. I am not among those who rated the game. They're all just random playtesters and game designers who playtest the games at Design Day. Chrissy says, is the whole game turnless? No, that's a great question. I will delve into that in detail soon, but the answer is no. The game is broken into rounds, and so each round is turnless, and then there's a break from that turnless element where you do a few steps at the end of the round to kind of collect yourself, to think about your strategy, and to often compare what you're doing to other players, and then there's another round that is turnless. So there are nice little breaks in the action. Ben says, is the theme clocks or time? Yeah, there is time is a big element, both thematically and mechanically in the game. And Phil says, are those dragons on the cover? And yes, it is set in a fantasy world that we created with the help of Robert and Travis. And dragons are a part of that world. This is a sentient dragon. There are other sentient elements. You're basically playing a character who is trying to gain the throne, to take the throne of this fantasy world. I'm trying to keep track of questions here, but if I do miss your question, please repeat it. Facebook keeps scrolling past them. James says, where does this game fall on the complexity spectrum compared to your other games? I would say it's right around viticulture level complexity. Yeah. Michael says, can we see the back of the box? No, you can't. I have carefully avoided doing that this time. I'm just showing the front of the box today. Kristen says, will Pendulum be available on Tabletopia? Maybe. Currently, we don't have anything in the works with Tabletopia for Pendulum. Because I think it might be there's some timers. There's sand timers in the game. And I'm not sure how well that would work on Tabletopia, but I'm open to giving it a try. People have examples of other games with sand timers that work well on Tabletopia. Athir says, is that game box the final size of the game? Yes, this is the first copy of the game. The game is already produced. It's on ocean freight shipments right now to fulfillment centers around the world, and the box is the same size as the Wingspan box. Mohammed says, would I rate Pendulum as heavier in gameplay complexity than Tapestry? It's around the same as Tapestry, I would say. Although it does have a longer rule book than Tapestry. Ryan says, will the number stamp be permanent on Pendulum? The numbers wore off pretty easily on Tapestry. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that it wore off. There is a different printing method that's used for individual numbering. I would suggest not rubbing it against things, and then it won't rub off. But they print this whole box and then they stamp on the individual numbering. So it is a different type of printing system, different type of ink. So you kind of have to watch out for that a little bit. The ink is meant to be permanent, but I guess it does rub off a little bit over time if you're not careful. Adam says, any chance you'll sign your first copies? Well, I'm actually not the designer, Adam, and signing copies is I don't want to say a hassle, but it is a hassle because you have to open up each cart. You have to like open up the palette. You have to open up each carton of games. You have to take open the shrink wrap. You have to sign the game. Then you have to wait for the ink to dry. Then put the shrink wrap out. Then put the game back in the carton for the fulfillment center. And the designer Travis is not in St. Louis, so we can't even easily go to the fulfillment center that we have in St. Louis or the one in Australia or the UK or Canada. So. I'm sure Travis would be happy to sign your copy of the game if you ever see him at a convention, but we are not signing, we aren't shipping out signed copies of the game. Brian says, are there Easter eggs to any previous Stonemaier games in Pendulum? And yes, I do believe there are a few little Easter eggs in the game. Ali says, does it use time as a resource? Yes, time optimization is a very big part of this game. Although it isn't a game where you feel rushed, even though it is turnless play, simultaneous play. It's very much, it is using time as a resource and leveraging, do I want to do this action that takes more time or do I want to do this other action that takes less time? Richard says, is there a theme for Pendulum? Yeah, when our website is live again, let me see if it is back live now. Looks like it is live, just slow. You'll see a little bit more about the theme. It is a game that is set in a fantasy world. Really, all of our games are themed to various degrees, and Pendulum is, we started out with the world building. Or at least the artist started out with the world building. The designer had already designed a lot of the mechanisms. Yoa says, what is the pre-order price? We won't reveal that yet, but you'll see that in early August. A couple of people have asked how many copies were made in the first print run. And I believe the number is around... actually, I don't want to say yet. I want to hold that off for a little bit. But I appreciate you asking. I got to be careful about what I say. Haz says, how can I become a playtester for Stonemaier games? Sign up as a Stonemaier ambassador, and some of our ambassadors will become playtesters. Zach says, what was the teaser artwork for? Yeah, I've teased some artwork for Pendulum on Instagram over the last few days. Instagram at Jamie Stegmaier. And the artwork was for a certain card type in the game. The artwork that I've been showing off there was for the province cards in the game, which I'll explain what they are later, but they come from the province cards. Chris says, will I be releasing design diaries from Travis and also from yourself from the development perspective in the lead up to the pre-order? Yes, yeah, that's what we'll be doing over the next few weeks. We'll be revealing the design diaries. Travis has a big, long write-up that he wrote for me, and I'll be quoting from what Travis wrote in the design diary post that I'll write. So you'll get perspectives from the designer, you'll get perspectives from me, the publisher, and the developer of the game, and just little stories. And I'll also be revealing the components along the way. So I'll be talking about kind of using visuals in every design diary to show some new element of the game and how it came to be. A couple of you have mentioned the typo. Let me mention that to our web developer real quick. I'll let him know so he can work on that while I'm live. Christopher says, what do I think will be the weight of Pendulum on Board Game Geek? Probably around a 3, medium weight. Gerald says, did you solve the real-time problem with very slow analysis paralysis prone players? I didn't solve it. I'm not the designer, but Travis, the designer, I think has a really clever implementation to address analysis paralysis in games through what he did in Pendulum. Ali says, when do pre-orders begin? Early August. It should be August 5th, but if things go terribly wrong with customs and freight shipping, that might change a little bit, but we're targeting August 5th. So I said August 5th is the date. Vicky said, what's the expected price? I'm not going to talk about price yet, though, but it is it'll be what I consider a very reasonable price for what we're putting into this game. Christopher said, what drew me to the design of this game? That is a great question. I want to go into that in detail in a design diary post, but it did start with how high of a rating it got at our design day game playtesting event. That it definitely stood out. When a game gets a 9.3 rating out of 10 at that event, it's going to stand out to me. I'm going to want to look into it a little bit more. So that was the starting point for me. Michelle says, can we buy this game in Italy? You will be able to buy this game in Italy in Italian. And you can buy it in English if you want from our fulfillment center in the UK. Cody also asked, do I have a retail price? We do know the price of the game, but I'm not revealing it yet. Ian says, the link to Scythe iOS in today's e-newsletter is not working. Is the plan to have that live today? Oh, I'm sorry, that's not working. Let me check that out. It should have been working. Mine's working, yeah. My link, it just goes to the Apple Store. If you go search for Scythe Digital on the Apple Store, you should be able to see it. The link is working for me. Jake says, when I say it's turnless, is that the same as saying that it's real time? Yes, I mean, there are real-time elements to the game, but it's not what you typically think of as real-time. It's not frantic. You're not scrambling to do things faster than other players. Rather, you are placing workers simultaneously as other players on certain action spots where certain actions take longer to complete than other actions. Someone asked about Robert. Has he worked on other games? And to my knowledge, no, Robert hasn't worked on other board games yet. Phil says, are you designing... Oh, I missed the question. Sorry. I'm going to scroll down a little bit because Facebook keeps scrolling past the questions as I start to answer them. So feel free to repeat these questions. Let's see. Richard says, do you help with development for Stonemaier games you don't design? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when we have another game by another designer, I spend a lot of time working on the development of it. For this particular game, my co-founder, Alan, spent a bit of time working on the development of it, and then I took over from there and worked on the development for a lot of the process. Dave says, can you show us your personal favorite piece of art from Pendulum? I will, but I won't today. Yeah. Brandon says, box size looks the same as Wingspan. Yes, the exact same box size as Wingspan. Mo says, is there a special board shape? It is a square game board. Nicholas says, will retailers be able to order to coincide with the release? Yes, we do let some retailers order directly from us. Retailers also typically order from distributors. The retail release date, as usual for us, is a few months after the pre-order release date. We basically will spend all of August shipping our pre-orders to customers, and then the retail release date will be a few weeks after that, maybe around a month after that. Joe says, will all future games be one-word titles? Not necessarily. I do love the one-word title, but if a game has a better name that needs more words, we'll definitely publish. In fact, I know of one game that we're working on that has more than one word. Yeah. Betsy says, can I reveal any of the physical components for Pendulum? I can, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm just showing the box today, and a design diary post over the next few weeks, I will be sharing a lot more, especially visually, about what the game is. We do have, the game is already printed, and it's on ocean freight. It's on ships headed to fulfillment centers around the world right now, so all the components are final. Martin says, is there shipping to Argentina? I do believe we ship to Argentina right now. There's certain South American countries that we have huge difficulty shipping to, where games consistently just don't arrive. But I think Argentina is one of those that we can successfully ship to. Froyland says, can I share some information about the asymmetric aspect of Pendulum? I'll say in very brief right now that each player plays a different character vying to take the throne in this fantasy world. I'll explain what that asymmetry means in a future design diary post. David says, Fulfillment Center, will it be a Kickstarter then? No, we don't use Kickstarter, but we do ship all of our products, including new products, from fulfillment centers from around the world. So if you order, no matter where in the world you are, especially if you are in Canada, Europe, the US, or Australia, New Zealand, we ship to you from within your region. We ship from a fulfillment center within your region, whatever you order from us. Jake says, which year's design day was this? How long was this in development? I think it was design day 2018 when this made such a splash at design day. So it's been in development since then. Facebook is doing that scrolling thing again here, so I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Joseph says, "Is there Automa in it?" And yes, that plays from 1 to 5 players, like almost all of our games. It includes a robust Automa system in it, which lets you play against an intelligent opponent or an opponent that feels intelligent when you're playing solo, without without requiring you to take care of all the upkeep of actually running what another player would be doing. Danny says, "What's the playing time?" The playing time is 60 to 90 minutes. And it actually sticks pretty exactly to that because of the way the turnless system in the game works. Forlin says, "Will it come with an insert?" And yes, it does have an insert in the box. Tara says, "Will the components be beautiful?" That's highly subjective. I'm really happy with how the components turned out, but you'll see them over the course of the next few weeks and you can determine for yourself if you think they're beautiful. But I do think Robert did a wonderful job on the art of this game. Justin says, "Is there a sand timer in this game?" Yeah, there are multiple sand timers in this game. I know that can be a turnoff for some people, but I hope you stick around to learn how the sand timers work, because it is not a game where you feel rushed or frantic or stressed. It is rather, you will make decisions in the game when you place workers on certain areas that take certain amounts of time to complete those actions, and the timer, that's how the time plays into it. Do I want to put a worker on a spot where he's going to be there for a while, he or she will be there for a while, to get a very powerful benefit, or do I want to use a worker on this other space that doesn't take that long to complete, but the benefit is much smaller? That's the type of decision you'll be making in the game. Johan says, "Will there be a French version?" Not in the first print cycle, but our Matago is working on a translation of the game, so there will be eventually, yes. Facebook's doing that thing again. Again, feel free to repeat your question. I'm not ignoring anything. Okay, Rich says, "I know you aren't the designer of the game, but how much do you play a role in tweaking the design and gameplay mechanisms?" Yeah, I usually play a pretty big role in it. Yeah, I want our games to be as fun and functional and as intuitive as possible. In this game, I played a pretty big role in the user interface, because I really wanted, I thought it would be really, really important, as the designer did, for the user interface to be very intuitive and clear and kind of concise. Because you are playing in a turnless system. You are taking actions simultaneously as other players. And so everything needs to be really clear if you're playing that way. Junior says, "Will this be released with your Brazilian partner?" You mentioned Grok Games. I know them as Ludo5, but I think they were bought by Grok or merged with Grok. Currently, they are not working on a version of this game, but I hope they will. Dave says, "Will we get a specific Automa design diary from Morton?" And yes, you will. Yeah, Morton's going to work on that. Morton is the person who runs Automa Factory. They specialize in creating intelligent solo modes for tabletop games and largely Stonemaier games. JB says, "Is this the 2017 Stonemaier Design Day game, Heir to the Empire?" Yes, that is the original name of the game. And I'm glad you found the date for that, JB. I was thinking it was 2018. Sounds like it was 2017. So I'm glad you found that. Daniel says, "Does the game come with a life-size grandfather clock and cost $2,000? I can confirm that that is not the MSRP for the game, and it doesn't come with a life-size grandfather clock. Patrick says, "The side digital app doesn't come up on a search with his iPhone." That's odd. I don't know. It's coming up for me on the App Store, at least here in the U.S. in St. Louis, but maybe it's, I don't know. I don't know why that wouldn't work for other people. But feel free to contact. Our digital games are run by other developers, so feel free to ask Asmodee Digital or the Knights of Unity about that, and they might know more. But hopefully it'll be working soon. Vito says, "Is it a game trays insert?" No, we didn't. We didn't use game trays for this particular insert. Game trays does a wonderful job, but we didn't think they were needed for this particular insert. But it does have a full-fledged plastic insert in the box. Carol says, "Any word on what languages the game will be published in by international partners?" Yeah, let me share that list with you right now. While I load up that page, Nicholas says, "Through play design, has the optimal player count emerged?" Really, when we publish games, the player count that we print on the box, which is 1 to 5 players for this game, we believe that the game works really well at all those player counts, or we wouldn't print them on the box like this. So 1 to 5 players, the game works really well at all those player counts, in our opinion. Josh says, "Will the rulebook be bigger than 4 pages?" Yes, it is a longer rulebook than 4 pages in this particular game. I designed Tapestry around the idea of having a short rulebook. That wasn't the design strategy for this game. Okay, the other languages in the first cycle of printing for Pendulum are Dutch, German, Russian, Hungarian, Italian, and Czech. There we go. David says, if we want a copy before it is available with retailers, how would one have to order directly on the Stonemaier Games website? Yes, that's exactly how you'd get it. Yeah, either from us, and actually we are partnering with MeepleSource as well. MeepleSource was going to represent this game at Gen Con when Gen Con was happening this year. Unfortunately, Gen Con isn't going to happen. And so MeepleSource already bought a bunch of copies of this game to sell at Gen Con, and they will also be allowed to sell and ship the game early because of that Gen Con arrangement, because they are essentially doing that for virtual Gen Con. And if you want the game within the first few weeks of when we start to sell it, you will need to order it from us. Retailers will have a release date about 2 months later. Ernani says, have I sent this out to reviewers? If yes, is Rado reviewing it? Yes, yeah. Advanced copy reviewers should already have their copies of the game at this point, or they're in transit right now. Rado is among them, and they will be allowed to release their reviews in a few weeks. And also, unlike Tapestry, a little controversial, the reviewers will share their reviews about a week before the pre-order. So you'll have plenty of time to watch those reviews, learn about if the game is a good fit for you, and then decide a few days later if you want to actually pre-order it from us. David says, what is your process for selecting art? This looks somewhat Scythe and Tapestry adjacent. I don't know, we just try to find the right artist for the game. In this particular case, I wanted a world builder artist. So I talked to Robert. I found his work, I think, on ArtStation. It's been a while since I originally reached out to him, but I saw that he had kind of built some mini worlds, and I said, would you want to build this world with us? And Robert was game for that. All right. Al says, are there any unique or selling point components such as the mechs and scythe or the bird tower, the dice tower, and wingspan? And yes, of course, yeah. In all of our games, we have a component hook and other hooks in the game. And so, there are such hooks in Pendulum that you'll learn about soon. Frank says, will there be combat, war, area control aspects? No, there's no combat, there's no war, and no area control, but there is plenty of player interaction. Ilya became a Stonemaier champion. That's awesome. Thank you for becoming a Stonemaier champion, Ilya. Dave says, what is the variability like? That's a great question. I will talk about that in detail in a design diary post. Junior says, is the game language dependent? Is the game language dependent? I'd say mostly language dependent. I'm thinking through the card. There are a few cards that do require one person to be able to speak English or read English at least. But a decent chunk of the game is indeed language independent, yeah. AC says, why is the copy number to the center, whereas on Tapestry it is the center? Oh yeah, so why is this off center? We thought it looked better with the tagline of the game, "Time conquers all," having that centered. And this would, I guess we could have put that right above there, but it would have blocked the art, where it seemed a little easier to put it over there. Gustavo says, is the automa in this game going to be more intelligent than me? We'll find out. You'll have to let us know after you play it. Pete says, how does the game handle interruptions in play? Yeah, that's actually a great question. I'll probably have to talk about that in a design diary post, but the very brief answer is you just turn the sand timers down on their sides so the sand stops moving. Or you're not always doing the turnless play. Every round stops and pauses, and there's easy chances to interrupt play every 10 minutes, basically. Tim says, can I tell us about the page count of the rule book? I don't even know it exactly offhand. I think it's around 18 pages. Bobo says, will there be a German version, and when? There will be. I don't know exactly when. That's up to our German partner. Mick says, what do I think that makes this game unique? There's a lot that makes this game unique. I'm going to talk about that soon, though. That's hard for me to just brush over quickly in this video. Brian says, does the game have multiple sand timers of different sizes? I'll talk about that in detail, too. All these questions. I love the curiosity about this game. I love the excitement whenever we share a new game. And this is our only new game of 2020, so it means a lot to me that you are excited about this game. Gary says, is Pendulum good with 2 players? Absolutely, yeah. When we put that player count on the box, 1 to 5, we mean it. We mean that it plays well and has been tested at all of those player counts. Grant says, miniatures and resource tokens. You'll have to wait to find out what the components are in the games. Facebook's doing that scrolling thing a little bit, so I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Brandon says, any information on the Tapestry expansion? There will be soon, but definitely not today. Today I'm focusing on Pendulum. I do have one other note about the e-newsletter. We are thinking about maybe making a printed version of Rolling Realms. And if you want us to, and you got the e-newsletter, especially if you clicked on it and the website didn't work right away, the website was running a little bit, basically crashed due to the e-newsletter. But if you'd like to offer us your feedback on whether or not you would buy a printed copy of Rolling Realms with cards, dry erase markers, things like that, please fill out the one question poll on our website, on the Rolling Realms page of our website. In fact, I wonder if Rolling Realms, is that listed under all of our games? Yeah, it is. Okay, good. James says, who are the reviewers? I don't know all the names offhand. I have a list, but I'm not going to list them off right now. But you said, will Quackalope be doing a review? And Quackalope will be doing a review of one of the advanced copies. Steven says, how much input did Travis Jones have on the art, graphic design, and components? You know, I always involve our designers in that so that they can offer their feedback. That's a process that I lead as the publisher. But Travis knew what we were doing throughout the process and offered input when he had some things to share. Al says, is this a game you were looking into for time travel? No, this is not a time travel themed game. But I do love how time is used as a resource in this game. Josh says, how often can we expect a design diary? Pretty much once every weekday. With the July 4th weekend coming up here, it might be, I might not post one of the days, Friday or Monday, but pretty much every weekday for the next couple of weeks. Edge says, how's the pre-order channel for Philippines? For the Philippines, we do, we ship from the U.S. to Asia because we don't have a great fulfillment center in Asia right now. I'd love to find one, but we don't have one. He also says, any plans for Rise of ROS and Digital Scythe? ROS. I think you meant Rise of Fenris, probably. And someday, but it's going to take some time for the developers to get to that. In fact, they haven't even gotten to the Wind Gambit yet, or even Scythe Encounters, or the modular board. So they have a lot of stuff to get through. Jake says, is there a scaling feature in the game to help it play similar at all player counts, or is it more of a solitaire-style game? It's definitely not a solitaire-style game. There are plenty of reasons to pay attention to and interact with your opponents in this game. Is there a scaling feature? I want to answer that a little bit and saying that I don't think the game always needs to play the same at every player count, but I will say in this particular game, we do have, for example, a double-sided board, one for 1 to 3 players and one for 4 and 5 players. So we did design the board specifically around that idea. Travis did in particular, was a big advocate of that. Vito says, do we have a Facebook group for Pendulum yet? And yes, we do. Yeah, it's live right now on Facebook. Jake says, what's the theme of the game? It is a fantasy world that we designed with artist Robert Leask. So it is fantasy themed. David says, which ones have received a copy from you guys? Yeah, this question was asked a minute ago. I don't have the full list of reviewers in front of me, but I believe 11 reviewers, including Rado, Quackalope, and not a reviewer, but Watch It Played. Rodney at Watch It Played has a copy, so he'll go through the rulebook and help you learn how to play the game. Simon says, will this be the first Stonemaier game that I can beat my partner at, or will she still outmaster me at every turn? She still will outmaster you at every turn in this game, yeah. Phil says, are there more than 2 dragons in the game or the game's backstory? No, there's one dragon. You can play as this dragon. So this is a sentient dragon who's trying to gain the throne, similar to the other characters on the box. Let's see. I have a bunch of other topics that I wanted to talk about very briefly today. So let me run through them real quickly, and then I'll come back to Pendulum and then talk about your questions. So if I miss any questions while I'm doing this run through, let me know. Feel free to repeat them. I'm looking at the e-newsletter over here to see if there's any other big highlights. I mentioned Rolling Realms. Scythe Digital, as people have mentioned, Scythe Digital is on iOS, but apparently not everywhere. I wasn't aware of that, but I did post a link to Scythe Digital that works, at least in St. Louis. And Viticulture Digital is available on iOS and Android. The Steam version was supposed to be ready like a couple weeks ago, and it is ready, but the Steam store hasn't accepted it yet. So they are just waiting on the Steam store to accept it. Those are the main things from the e-newsletter. You can check out the link to that e-newsletter in the description of this video. The other topics that I'll cover real quick, I'll skip over like the games that I've been playing this week because we're so focused on Pendulum this week. Though also, real quick, I played Lords of Waterdeep on Steam. Fantastic. I also tried Expedition Northwest Passage for the first time and did a video about that yesterday. This week's top 10 video on Sunday was actually by our friends and partners at Top Shelf Gamer. They're a company that publishes, that consolidates and makes enhanced components for games, component upgrades and trays and fancy things like that. And so they shared, Marlene and Chad shared their top 10 favorite games and also shared some of the upgrades that go along with them. That video is on our YouTube channel right now as well. I did a blog post about why I don't think people should be afraid of other people stealing their ideas. One of the core ideas being that if you just have an idea and you haven't done anything with it, it really isn't worth much at all. It's pretty much worthless. It's only when you actually execute that idea and do something with it that that it has any value at all. But check out that if you've ever thought that, if you've ever been worried about someone stealing your idea, I highly recommend checking out the blog post that I posted. Was that Thursday or Monday? Yeah, that was on June 25th. Monday's blog post was about a website called Meepify that is trying to help creators connect with people who are likely to enjoy their games, or their games, and specifically singular. What else? I did a tabletop simulator playtest this week, an expansion that we're working on that I won't reveal right now, but an exciting playtest, and I've been getting a lot of good game design progress done. Oh, and I also there was a Steam sale. I bought Stardew Valley, which I've heard is a great game for people, for Euro gamers like me, even though it is a fully digital game, it isn't a tabletop game. So I'm curious if any of you have played Stardew Valley and enjoy it and have any tips or recommendations for me as I give that a try. Probably in a few weekends. I don't think I can do it this weekend or the next weekend, but fairly soon. Okay, I'm missing a ton of questions here, so let me scroll down a little bit. Again, sorry if your questions are missed, but feel free to repeat them and I'm happy to answer them. Justo says, when I introduced Wingspan, you said fans of Gizmos and Terraforming Mars might like it. What are the reference games for Pendulum? The reference games are Seven Wonders, which has simultaneous play. Pendulum isn't a drafting game, but it is a simultaneous play game. And Tzolk'in, one of my favorite worker placement games, because it has worker placement, it uses time as a mechanism, and time optimization. Time optimization is a huge part of Pendulum. Brian says, can you tell us how much you personally enjoy the game and the specific mechanisms? I will go into detail about that on my favorite mechanism video, but I really do personally love this game. And really, I don't publish any game that I don't love, that I am not happy to bring to the table every time. And this game just does some so really interesting, cool things that I haven't seen before. It has core elements like worker placement, engine building, things like that that I really enjoy. Asymmetry, I love those things. But the timeless worker placement system in the game, timeless turnless worker placement, or I guess turnless but time-driven worker placement system in this game is so refreshing. And it particularly connects with me because I am not an analysis paralysis player. And I'm a player who often gets stressed by real-time games that have timers. This game feels different. It's a game that does have timers, that doesn't stress me out, but removes analysis paralysis and keeps things moving along at a really brisk pace. I love that about this game. Melissa says, coming in late, but is this a real-time strategy game? Real-time, it is accurate. I think turnless simultaneous play is maybe more accurate for this game. I think people associate real-time games with a timer ticking down, giving you less and less time. This game is more about time optimization and turnless play. But one way to answer that is yes. Steven says, I worry about double-sided boards with the art on the inside degrading over time. Is there a special process used to minimize that? And yeah, with Pendulum, if you have Tapestry, Steven, as I think you do, we use a special coating, a very special, fairly expensive coating on the tops of the mats. And in Pendulum, we use that coating on both sides of the mats to prevent anything from degrading over time. It's called frosting. We use this frosted coating. Feels really nice, and it protects the player mats really well. Yeah. Socrates says, when will it be available for pre-order? August 5th is the date we're targeting. Currently, the games have been made. They are heading to fulfillment centers right now, and August 5th is the date we're targeting, unless something catastrophic happens with those ocean freight shipments. Dennis says, how would I describe the player interaction? You said, is there more take that in this game? No, definitely not take that. As for positive player interaction, it is in the game a positive player interaction. My quick answer is worker placement. certain places where I place my workers, you cannot place them, but it does use the grande system that we have in viticulture. So it is kind of a tight worker placement game, but you can get out of those tight spots with your grande worker. That's one way. There's also a bunch of other ways that I'll talk about in a design diary post. And I'm glad there's some questions. In fact, these questions are really helpful. They can help guide some of the design diary posts that I will write. Interactions. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Clint says, you can play as the dragon. You can indeed play as the dragon. Jonathan says, any date for Wingspan Digital? The last I heard from Monster Couch, the developer, the company that has the digital rights, was August. So in about a month, hopefully. Nicholas says, what feedback stood out the most to you during playtesting? Ooh, that's a good question. I should be able to answer that question, but it's been a while since I've reviewed the playtest data because it's been a while since we completed playtesting for this game. I'll have to think about that. I can't think of anything really offhand. We got a great amount of playtest feedback from a variety of playtesters, and we even So I'll look into that and answer that on a design diary post. I'll make a note of that. Mike says, any plans for Scythe Digital on Android? I'm hoping that Asmodee Digital goes that route, but currently I'm not aware of them doing that. Blake says, any news about the Tapestry expansion? Not this month, but next month I will start talking about the Tapestry expansion. Joe says, what's my pick for the Spiel des Jahres winners this year and Kennerspiel? The ones that I pay most attention to the Kennerspiel because that's my style of game. I love cartographers. I'm guessing the Crew will win, but I haven't played it. I think I will enjoy the Crew too, but I love cartographers. And I love that the King's Dilemma got nominated. I haven't played that either, but to have a pretty out there game be nominated is awesome. And I can't wait to play that one too. Al says, does your game character develop or improve over the course of the game? They do. Yeah, there's definitely a strong engine building element to this game. And a couple different aspects. One of my favorite, I can't wait to share one of my favorite things about the game because it does have to do with the engine building and it is awesome. Cody says, Between Two Castles was also at the 2017 Design Day. What made Pendulum take longer to release than Between Two Castles? Just that some games have a longer development time than others. This was a game that we even looked at for a few months after Design Day to decide if it was a game that we wanted to publish. And when we made that decision, we went all in for it, and it took a while to get it where I was really happy with it, and where Travis was really happy with it. But I think we got there. Carol says, have Biddy and Walter, my cats, playtested the components as cat toys for Pendulum. Biddy was involved in the photo shoot for Pendulum. You'll see those photos soon. In fact, maybe I'll post one on Instagram today to have Biddy help me announce the game on Instagram. But Walter has not shown interest in the game. Froyland says, like most of my games, does Pendulum have stars? I don't think Pendulum actually no, it does. There is a star-shaped token in the game. Dustin says, would like to know more about player interaction, and it's not Take That. No, there's not Take That player interaction. I don't really think we have that in any of our games. The combat in Scythe is the closest to that, but no, we don't incorporate spite into our games. We try to avoid that. Carrie says, has the artist worked on other games? And to my knowledge, no, Robert has not worked on other games yet. Cody says, Melissa says she compared Stardew Valley to Caverna, which is great. I love Caverna, so I'm excited to dive into Stardew Valley. Cody says, what are my holiday plans for this weekend? Holiday plans. I'm hoping to eat some good food, hang out with a few select people that I feel comfortable doing so with social distancing. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Marshall recommended reading a guide before playing my first session of Stardew Valley. Thank you for that tip. Yeah, I've also heard that it's fun to discover it on my own, though, so I'll have to maybe mitigate the two. But I have watched some videos about it, so I do know some information about how it works. Vincent says, what triggers the game end? That's a very specific mechanical question. Let me save that for a design diary post. Greg says, have I tried Wingsong, the Songs of Wingspan? An app that plays the song of the Wingspan bird when you point the camera at the card. No, I don't think I even knew that existed. That's pretty cool though. Christopher says, what's the weight in comparison to other Stonemaier games? I'd say it's around viticulture tapestry weight. Vito says, are the workers themselves sand timers? No, they're not. They're meeples. David says, if it has a time-driven element, does that mean players will be rewarded for thinking fast? No, no, it is not a frantic game. The players who think the fastest are not the winners. It's the players who optimize the time the best in terms of kind of what I've said. You may have already heard this, but the idea is that you're placing workers on the board for spots that the worker is kind of locked into for a certain amount of time, depending on how long it takes to complete that action, to gain that benefit. So you're deciding, okay, do I want to lock this worker into an action that takes a long time but get a very powerful benefit, just like Tzolk'in, or do I want to put the worker on there for a very brief amount of time and get a lesser benefit, again, just like Tzolk'in. McCall says your games in general tend to be light on negative interaction. How's that looking for Pendulum? Very similar. Yeah, I'm not a fan of negative interaction or take that in games. I'm okay with a little bit of conflict. I like for there to be plenty of reasons to pay attention to what other players are doing and have a little bit of tension with other players. There's definitely that in Pendulum, but opportunities for spite are basically what we avoid in our games. James says, can I play as a green player? You can play as a green player in Pendulum. Brian says, have I considered making the realms in Rolling Realms modular? Yes, yeah. If you can see our description of what I'm considering for Rolling Realms on our e-newsletter, I'd like to use cards in the game. So each player would have like 9 realm cards, on the same 9 realm cards, and every player would set aside the same 3 and use them each round. And that way it's very expandable. So as we add new games, like Pendulum would be the 10th realm in the game, we could just add cards to it. So it's very easily expandable that way. Io says, what parts of the game do I enjoy the most? I'm going to talk about that over the next few weeks, but I think I've talked about a few of them today. Nicholas says, what feedback stood out the most to you during... Oh, people are repeating questions. Yeah, totally fine to do. Repeat your questions if I missed them. Feel free to do that. Ramon says, does the game have an escapement mechanism? You know, I'm not sure what you mean by escapement. Can you clarify what you mean by that? Ephraim says, is Pendulum the new game? Yes, this is our one new game of 2020. Pedro says, what about playability or replayability? Do you reckon it will be a different game every time? Yes, yeah, there's a ton of different ways the game shifts a little bit from game to game. Not just a little bit, a fair amount. Both the asymmetric characters, the different province cards that come out, the achievement cards that come out in different orders, and the way the province cards come out in different orders. But the asymmetry is very strong too from character to character. So that's a big part of it. And yeah, I'll go into that soon. I want us to talk about more, but that's all I should say for now. But I'm going to note that as a topic for one of the design diary posts. Yeah, so thank you for asking about that. Let's see. Jason says, was there a chocolate of the week? You know, I didn't do chocolate of the week. So the coffee I'm drinking today is mostly an oat milk dark chocolate kind of mocha coffee, cooled coffee drink that I'm really enjoying. And it's mixed with some light caramel Starbucks homebrew that we made. So, but it's a little bit more heavy on the dark chocolate. So that'll be my chocolate of the day today. Ephraim says, when's the release date? The retail release date is typically a few months after our pre-order, and our pre-order is scheduled for August 5th. Suzanne says, will Champions get an earlier pre-order? The way we've done it for the last few games is that Champions pre-order at the same time as everyone else, but they get priority shipping. So you're, as a champion, your order will be shipped before non-champion orders. Gerald says, with other of your games expansions and other products, will other of your games expansions and other products be available from the UK fulfillment center if we ordered with Pendulum? Yeah, all of our products are either in stock in the UK, or we will, if you order something that isn't currently in stock, which is pretty rare, but it does happen, we will get it there in a timely manner. But yeah, we are kind of preparing for that to bolster our stock of stuff at the UK fulfillment centers and all of our fulfillment centers in Canada, Australia, and the US to be ready for people to order stuff in addition to Pendulum, because most likely we will also be selling the Scythe complete rulebook at the same time as Pendulum. We'll see about that. I'm not exactly 100% sure about that, but that is the current plan. Matthew says, is Pendulum going to have a lot of high quality components, including the linen paper manual? Yeah, we do use that fancy paper in the manual for Pendulum. We pretty much do that with all of our games now, and I hope to do that for all of our games. including the Scythe complete rulebook has that paper. And yeah, I always try to focus on high quality components at a reasonable price. Obviously, we have pushed the boundaries of that with some of our games. Pendulum is very reasonably priced, though. Mark says, I just bought Euphoria, opening it after dinner. Does anyone have the digital rights? Not yet, actually. No, no one has the digital rights to Euphoria. There is a digital version created by Dave Dyer on BoardGamespace.net, but the digital rights are not limited to Dave. Dennis says, will there be one version of the game, or there'll be a premium upgrades available at the start? The game is what I would say premium out of the box, but there is just one version of the game. And but I'm sure that there will be other companies like MapleSource, Top Shelf Gamer that come up with even better components that they'll sell separately. Jacob says he's laughing at how I'm only holding the top of the box because of all the accidental peeks that I gave us of Tapestry during its reveal. And yes, I have learned my lesson. I'm only showing you, or I'm only holding the actual box top so I don't accidentally reveal something. Johan says, since it's asymmetric, will the game be more balanced than Tapestry without the changes that you made afterwards? Yeah, without going into Tapestry, but yeah, we always focus with all of our games. We playtest a ton, we analyze the data, we try to make it as balanced as possible. And the asymmetry, I would say, in Pendulum is less than what it is in Tapestry. There are strong asymmetric elements, but they are much more controlled in Pendulum, and we playtested the heck out of it. So I think it is pretty well balanced. Tim says, did I have input into, the question scrolled past me, so I missed it, but into Leaders of Euphoria? And yes, I did. Yeah, I was part of the development process for Leaders of Euphoria, which is now it's published by Pull the Pin Games. Originally, it was Overworld Games. Atheist says, I thought I saw a camel in a teaser pic. Does it have anything to do with a fantasy Arabic theme? It's its own fantasy world. Apparently, there are camels in that world. But yeah, it kind of follows kind of the sand, the desert theme. There is a little bit of that in the game. Falcon says, is it any way related to civilization building? No, our Civ game is Tapestry. There is engine building in this game, but not Civ building. Max says, are there gears in the game? There are no gears in the game, no. Mark says, considering your recent post about apps, what is my thought on timer apps being used with this, or is that not possible? Not possible for this particular game. You'll learn why that is soon, but it wouldn't work for this particular game. Ivan says, can I tell us more about the new game? There's a lot here. I would go back in the video and watch some of the stuff I've talked about. I've talked a ton about the game, so you can watch anything in this video and learn a lot about Pendulum. He says, are we hunting dragons? No, you aren't hunting dragons. You can play as the dragon. Anthony says, is there any story? Yes, there's a lot of world building and backstory that went into the game. And it's in the rule book and on some of the cards and in the provinces in the game. Some of it's visual, some of it's written. It's not a narrative game, though. You're not reading story elements during the game. Glenn says, if the workers aren't timers, which they aren't, they're meeples, then couldn't the game function just by adding tokens to each space, each worker placement round, and getting the worker and benefit back? No, it doesn't. I mean, Glenn, you'll have to see how the rules work before guessing how they work. You will see it is a game that works with timers. However, if you find that you really don't like the timers in the game, which is completely possible, there is a way to play without the timers and have a very similar experience. It adds turns to the game, but there is a variant that we put in the box for those who really enjoy the mechanisms, but just for whatever reason don't like the timers. Ramon says that if Pendulum is turnless, what do I mean by locking the worker for an amount of time? Usually amount of time on other game means turns. Yeah, that is the case in another game. That is what makes Pendulum unique. And I'll talk about that soon in one of the design diary posts. Nicholas says, how is replayability? I may have already answered that from you, Nicholas, but yeah, there's replayability in terms of the asymmetry, the different cards that come out and the order in which they come out in the game, especially the achievement cards, but also the province cards, and replayability just in terms of actions that you take versus other players and what actions they're taking and blocking and things like that. Julia says, is the designer of Pendulum a new designer? Yes, I think this is Travis's first published game. The designer is Travis Jones. Zach says, are each of the playable characters, do they play very differently? Not in terms of the style of like a game like Root. not that type of asymmetry, but it's more like scythe style asymmetry, where you have a few things that you do differently than other players. Brent says, I have not seen the Stonemaier Champion update in a while. Has there been one? Brent, yeah, the last Stonemaier Games update was, I believe, on June the 6th. We usually send out updates around the 6th or 7th of the month, and that was the last one for Stonemaier Champions. Carrie says, have I mentioned the price point? I mentioned that I'm not going to mention the price point yet, but I will in early August when we launch the pre-order. Nicholas says, how many new games planned for next year? What's still coming this year? This year we have a Pendulum, then we have the Tapestry expansion and the Wingspan Oceania expansion. Next year, the current plan is for us to have 2 games and maybe 2 expansions, but that's the plan. That depends on when they're actually ready. John Lucas says, what do I think about Robert Leask? I love the world building. I love the art that he did in this game. Great to work with. Cody says, can I tell us about the decision to use plastic bits in Tapestry rather than the wooden bits? Do I have a personal preference? What are the cost differences? Plastic and wood, they're comparably cost. I do love the feel of wood. But honestly, some experiences with Australia turned me off from wood a little bit because Australia has weird fumigation rules that I don't even still completely understand that impact wood. So if you want to send wooden components into Australia, they often have to be fumigated. Sometimes shipments have been sent back to China because the wood wasn't fumigated. So to avoid that whole hassle, we typically go with plastic components now. But I do really love wood too. The other reason to go with wood, with plastic over wood, is that plastic can be very precisely sized at scale, whereas wood can vary exactly in terms of exactly how it fits into certain areas. That fit doesn't really matter in this game, but it does matter in Scythe where we have those dual layered boards. Scott says, do I have a sense of an optimal number of players? Will it be a great 2-player game? Yeah, Mary, I've already answered this, but yeah, it's a 1 to 5 player game, and it's fully play tested at all 5 player counts, and just as fun, I think, at all 5 player counts. And that's the kind of a Stonemaier thing. If we don't actually think it will work at all 5 player counts or all player counts, we say so on the box. Like with Between Two Cities and Between Two Castles, we say that it's a 3 to 7 player game, but that it has a 1 to 2 player variant. That way, you know by looking at the box the optimal player counts. Matthew says, are there going to be different versions of Pendulum? No, there's just going to be the one version. I don't know if we'll individually number future printings. Probably not, but all first printing copies will be individually numbered. That'll be the only difference between the printings. Gerben says, how interactive is the game compared to other Stonemaier games? So in all of our games, I would say I could list 10 different ways in any of our games that you are interacting and paying attention to other players. There's not a lot of negative interaction, hardly any negative player interaction or spiteful player interaction in our games. But there's still a lot of reasons to pay attention to what other players are doing and to create tension between players. And so Pendulum, I could easily list 10 ways that is the case in Pendulum as well. Let's see. I'm going to try to scroll through and find some questions that haven't been asked yet. She lists as plastic or wood in Pendulum. There are plastic bits, not wood in Pendulum. Jeremy says, do we know when Viticulture releases on Steam? It's supposed to be a few weeks ago, so we're still waiting on Steam to actually approve it, or Digidice is waiting on Steam to approve it. George says, how much randomness does the game have in its core design? This is one of our probably least random games. There is variability, but there isn't random card draw in this game like in some of our other games. Skylar says, how did I come up with the name Pendulum? Yeah, I just brainstorm different names. I think I thought of Pendulum. I was looking at one-word names that had to do with time and had kind of a weight to it. I think Pendulum has a good weight to the name. There's a lot at stake in this game. You're trying to vie to become the ruler of this kingdom. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just brainstormed some names, used thesaurus.com to come up with some words that had to deal with time and clocks and things like that. Drew says, if Rolling Realms does get a physical release, would you consider inviting other designers, developers, companies to create cards? Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know exactly how that would work yet, if they would be official Stonemaier productions or cards or realms, or if I would just say, okay, any company can make a card. Here's the type of card material that we use for Rolling Realms. Run with it. I don't know yet, but I'm certainly open to it. Allie says, do I have a plan in making a video in which I rank the games by Stonemaier Games published by how much you like them. I don't think I'll be doing that, but I did do a video a few months ago about my favorite mechanisms in each of our games, each game published by Stonemaier Games, in terms of how I'd like to see those mechanisms in games by other publishers as well, and how they are in some other games by other publishers. Jake says, is Pendulum a game designed with expansions in mind? Kind of, I mean, in the same way that any of our games, or most of our games are designed, not Charterstone, but most of our games are designed with expansions in mind, in that there is the potential for expansions in Pendulum, like more characters, things like that. But it's not like we definitely did not cut anything from the core game and save it for an expansion. You did remind me of something here though that I want to note in a design diary post. Christopher says, any updates on the Wingspan expansion? Just that it's in production right now. Yeah, early production. Oh, Yoa had a question about expansions as well. Yeah. Werner says, how is the footprint? Like Tapestry footprint or smaller? Tapestry takes up a bit of space on your table. Pendulum does not take up that much space, although it's not too much less. A little bit less than Tapestry. Yeah. Athir says, does it have a spatial puzzle element like many other games lately? Nope, no spatial puzzle element. Barry says, are there player boards? And yes, there are character mats in the game. Mary says, why sand as the code name? Because of sand timers? And yes, that's exactly right, because of the sand timers in the game. Jeremiah says, can I talk about the victory tracks and how victory points work in the game? I will talk about that in a design diary post. I'm pretty sure I have a note about that, but I will note it just in case. Yeah. Ernani says, will there be a design diary today? I haven't decided yet. Probably. Yeah, I think so. But not this morning. Probably this afternoon. Francisco says, will it give you a similar experience to Captain Sonar? That's interesting. I hadn't thought about comparing it to Captain Sonar. There is a little bit of that. Captain Sonar, I would say, uses stress as a bit of a motivator in terms of the time, but it's not. Captain Sonar isn't super frantic, so I would say there is a little bit of Captain Sonar in this game. Yeah, a little bit of the feel of it. Rob says, I've heard sand timers can vary greatly by several seconds. Does this affect the game, and how is it addressed? If so, yes. Yeah, actually, that was something that we found out as we started to make the sand timers, that you're right, they do vary slightly in terms of the exact number of seconds. And that's okay. In Pendulum, that is completely okay that you have that. I would say it's, you'll want to use the same, like kind of run the sand timers in your game to see how big that variance is, so that information is known to all players, but it's such a small variance that it really does not have much of an impact at all in the game, and especially since it impacts all players. It's not that like each player has their own sand timer in the game. Kenneth says, how long does it take to play at 5 players? You could play as in short as 60 minutes, and the game would be as long as 90 minutes. It would be very difficult because of the timers for the game to go longer than 90 minutes. Matthew says, could there be an Art of Pendulum book from Robert Lees? There's the potential for it. Yeah, there aren't any plans for it, but there is the potential for it. Brian says, do I foresee this game being highly blinged out, upgraded like Wingspan? Maybe. We'll see. There are a few areas where it could be enhanced a little bit, but we try to include pretty nice components in the box as usual as well. Calva says, how language independent is Pendulum? Yeah, someone asked that earlier, and it actually is fairly language independent. There aren't too many components in the box that rely on English, but there are a few key components that you definitely need, like one English speaker if you have the English version of the game. Let's see. Michelle says, what is the first player token? It's a turnless game, so there is no first player token. There is a sense of player order at the end of each round, but there is no first player token. At least not that I can think of. I don't think there is. No, because it's turnless. So all players are taking turns at the same time. Tony says, Tony has a question about first player token as well. Yeah, there's no first player token in this game because it is a turnless game. Dennis says, has anyone correctly guessed the title after you showed the teaser images? I don't think anyone guessed the title. No, I don't know if anyone was even guessing at what the title would be. Yeah. Carrie says, how about I just make an authorized user on my credit card at this point? I'm glad you are confident in making in buying our games, Carrie. That means a lot to me. But also, there's a lot of information to come out about the game. Like all of our games, not all of our games are going to be for everyone. So feel free to take in the information over the next 2 weeks, read and watch what the reviewers say about it, and listen to the reviewers, and then make a decision in early August if it's a good fit for you. But I hope you give it a try. Jessica says, what characters can you play besides the dragon? A few of them are on the box here. So you can play as the dragon. You can play as the Minotaur down here. And you can play as the... I always forget what this is called. It's not a chimera, is it? It's not a... Is it a sphinx? What is this? What is this fantasy creature called? I don't know why I always forget it. Kevin says, would you compare the asymmetry to that in Dune? I haven't played Dune. I think in Dune there are different wind conditions, and that is not the case exactly in this game. Joshua says, the designer of Xia Legends of a Drift System, yeah, Cody from Far Off Games, has embraced the community modding and even released mod components. I actually had Cody contribute to a guest post on my blog about that a while ago, because I think it's really, really cool that he does that. Would you consider doing this with any Stonemaier game? Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of it. If you look at the different Facebook groups for our games, players design fan expansions and fan components all the time. There's a ton of cool fan creations for our games. Johan says, at what frequency will I be doing design diaries? Pretty much once every weekday for the next few weeks. Tim says, what's the other animal on the cover? Is it a second dragon? I know that's the animal that I'm trying to think of the name of. This is a specific, it has a specific fantasy name, but I'm blanking on it right now. Greg says, if I consider also making digital timers in app form, and I don't think digital timers would work for this game. You'll see why soon. Luke says, how many timers are in the game? There are 3 timers in the game. Mark says, how does the game do for colorblind players? As usual, we use some colorblind apps to make sure that the colors of the tokens, the meeples that you're placing on the board, that's the main area of confusion, where there could be confusion. We use an app to make sure they are as colorblind friendly as possible. But you also, you just have to know where you place the workers. That's an important thing to know in the game. So color blindness is not a big concern in this game because of, I know that I place my worker here. It's the only worker there. And so as long as I can kind of remember that, it's not a problem. Reed says, is there an AI opponent that can be added at lower player counts like in Tapestry? I'll have to check, but I believe that isn't... You don't do that in Pendulum. The AI player is only designed for solo play and isn't necessary, would probably impede play for other player counts. Ricardo says, any idea for when we can expect a translation in Italian? Please ask Genos Games about that. That's up to them to reveal. But they do have, they are working on the Italian version. Fraser says, a common concern about real-time competitive games is that no one can check if someone is cheating, deliberately or not. Although I would say cheating is inherently deliberate. Making mistakes is not cheating. Is this something that you've had to address? Yeah, we tried to address this in the UI of the game, but it is certainly a game that if you have someone who goes out of their way to make mistakes or to cheat, like with any game, they can get away with it. They can certainly get away with it in this game. And it is possible, like in any other game, to make mistakes in this game. And I would say the real-time element, the turnless element, the simultaneous play element, enhances that a little bit, increases the chance a little bit, yeah. But we tried to make it, the UI, as clear and as intuitive as possible to reduce the chances of that happening. Socrates says, what does it mean by turnless? It means that instead of players taking turn orders one by one, it's more like 7 wonders where you're all making simultaneous decisions in the game. It is not cooperative. It is a competitive game. This isn't a gargoyle. What is the name? It's not a griffin or a gargoyle. You guys are close, but not quite. Maybe it's a creature that Robert made up for this world. David says, when will reviewers be authorized to release gameplay content or videos? I don't have the exact date in front of me, but it's in a few weeks. Basically, after I'm done with the design diaries, they'll be able to post... they'll be able to show the game, talk about the game, and then they'll be allowed to share their opinions about a week before the pre-order starts. Griffin? Is that it? Now I just want to look it up and see, but I know I'll spoil something if I do. Manticore? All very close. Maybe it doesn't even have a name. I'll have to look it up. Mohammed says, are there any similarities to Genties or Kitchen Rush? I played Genties. I haven't played Kitchen Rush. I wouldn't really compare it to Gentees, though. No, based on my experience there, other than the Euro elements. Um, I'm past 11 here. Let me answer a few more questions, then I'll head on out. I'm very thirsty right now after this long live cast. Eric says, does the Pendulum box appear on the game storage tile and between two castles of Madkin Ludwig? It might. It might. I can't remember if we put it there, though. Ryan says, does anyone know if the Android Viticulture is the Essential Edition version? Yeah, I mean, the only version of the Wings Viticulture itself is the Viticulture Essential version. It has been for about 6 years now. So whenever someone says Viticulture, they're referring to the Essential Edition, especially in terms of the digital modes. A Manticore. I think it might be Manticore. That might be right. Winged Lion? Josh says just a winged lion. Okay, just a winged lion. Sean says, how many copies were produced in the original production run? I'm not going to reveal that yet, but I'm sure I will. You'll see it on the boxes as soon as the boxes start to be revealed. All right. I think I've reached the end of the questions. I'm sure I missed some when if I do, Alice is just a giant chicken. I'm going to put this video on YouTube, so if you do have any other questions or questions that I missed, feel free to post them in the comments on YouTube, and I am happy to answer them there. Thank you so much for all of your curiosity and excitement about this game and your patience for getting our website working again. If it wasn't working when you originally got the newsletter, please go over there and answer the poll about Rolling Realms and check out more information about Pendulum on our website. I'm really excited to share it with you there. So yeah, thanks for your time today, and I will see you next Wednesday. Or in the Pendulum Facebook group if you want to pay attention to the Design Diary post, which will also be on our website. All right, take care.